Hello. I feel like I'm a good person to talk on this because I see it from a lot of angles. And this video is being inspired by a specific incident, but I have separated its upload from its recording so that you cannot connect it to that incident, because this isn't about one incident. It's about a pattern that is caused by phenomena in the world. And that phenomenon involves a bunch of different things. It involves a person who is just a person, but who also has an increased level of influence and status because of the work that they have done, oftentimes in order to intentionally increase their influence and status. And it involves their relationship with the people who perceive them, and also the press, which is a thing that still exists. I'm sorry, the press. You're doing your best. It's hard out here. And that does seem like a good time to say that this video is brought to you by Ground News. Ground News is a website and an app that pulls coverage of the same story from tons of different outlets from all over the political spectrum and all over the world. They show you differences in language, political leaning, factuality, even who owns the outlet. And that transparency makes it harder for any one single narrative to quietly settle into your head unchecked. Plenty of times I have had the experience of reading a headline or a whole article and having an idea that I then move forward into the world with, and then later encountering some information that makes me think, actually, I didn't have the best piece of information in my head there, did I? And so this is what Ground News' mission is: to cut through the information overload, the sensationalism, the manipulative algorithms, and the general exhaustion of not knowing what to trust anymore. Right now, unsurprisingly frustrating me, RFK Jr. says he personally directed CDC's new guidance on vaccine and autism. But we can see all 43 articles about this, 13 from the left, 24 from the center, and 3 from the right, but only 2 are showing up. RFK Jr. ordered CDC to weaken autism vaccine claim. What claim exactly? That's not said in the headline. On the left, we have the AP, a source that I find credible and that I can then open and read that article. And RFK Jr. says he personally directed CDC's new guidance on vaccines and autism. And we can also pick out sources that we are already subscribed to or that we know are going to be available for us to actually read the article. Nothing quite like seeing a headline. You really want to read the article and then being like, I just can't add another one of these to my list. Subscribe to get 40% off the Vantage plan by using the QR code on screen or my link at ground.news/Hank. I don't know how I'm going to make this video. This is not scripted. Putting it off the dome here. Let's start with how an influential person perceives themselves. And I know this because I am one. Let's be honest. There's a bunch of people watching this video. So I'm not being cocky here. This is the situation. So let's start with how the influential person perceives themselves, which is that they perceive themselves as a person, especially initially, especially in the very early stages, and especially, I think, to some extent with online media success, because it does not come with all the same infrastructure as traditional media success. And that infrastructure built up over many decades in terms of, you know, the people that you could hire to help manage it for you, and also the level of resources that you have to help manage it for you. Regardless, the influential person, whether that is a CEO of a tech company or a celebrity or an influencer, they think, I'm just a person who got lucky. I'm just a nerd who built an app. I'm just a guy who makes YouTube videos. And we all, of course, see ourselves through very rosy lenses, I think, for the most part. Like, even people who have lots of negative self-talk, they also have ways where they see themselves in a kind light. You know, it's like, there's reasons why I'm in this place. Regardless, the stories that we tell ourselves are pretty true. Like, if you just took them as a person off the street, that story would be roughly the same level of true as the person on the street. But like, it's not the whole truth, because there's also this thing that comes along with status, that comes along with millions of followers, or billions of dollars, or thousands of employees, or if you're a politician, like the power to shape the laws. Influential people have influence, and that's real. It's a real thing, and the world's not wrong to notice it. And I often see, especially in people who are like new media famous, this is very typical. And I will give them this. They don't have the infrastructure around them to like get the press to say a bunch of nice things about them. And also the press isn't used to that, or wasn't used to that. It's better at it now, where there's just like ways to go out and like do stuff if you're regular famous, right? You go on Ellen, or you went on Ellen. You get your story in Us Weekly. But because they don't get into the magazines, they feel like they're not being like appreciated by the press. Feel like they're not being appreciated by the systems of people talking about you. And because we're all caught up in our own brains about how, like, you know, we understand really deeply the individual work that individuals do and the sort of corners that we occupy, and we don't necessarily understand like what's going on in other parts of, you know, fame and celebrity, which is all over the place and very distributed and fractured now. But they kind of want to be seen as a normal person who has influence. That's the best case scenario. Like, that's the balance you want. Like, I'm a normal person who makes mistakes, but I have influence and I'm going to use that. But you don't get that. You don't get it to have it be that way. Like, you want to keep the benefits of all of the attention and the opportunities and the status and the money without accepting the responsibilities and scrutiny that comes along with that. It comes along with scrutiny. And some of that is jealousy. Absolutely. Like, you know that because if you're watching, you're jealous of people. I know I am. I get jealous of people. I specifically I don't get jealous of people who I think are doing the job well. I get jealous of people who are more successful than me, who I think are doing the job badly. But anyway, what this feels like when you are the person who feels like a normal person, who suddenly has an increased spotlight on you and scrutiny being applied to the decisions that you make, what it feels like is those people are out to get me. And this, of course, is an old story. Like, this is not actually new. If you have influence, if you are a celebrity, a story that can be told about you that has a little bit of drama, that has you making a mistake, that takes you down a peg, that's business, baby. And it's kind of the cost of influence, because the press is not your friend. It's not really supposed to be your friend. Now, there are ways, if you hire a publicist and you have the inroads and like all the sort of systems change, where the press can become friendly to you and work to your benefit. But like, let's be honest, these days, most of the sort of brand building that gets done is not done in the press. It's done on your own YouTube channel, or you visiting other people's YouTube channels, or on your TikTok, or like on social media. And the press can seem like an enemy because they do want clicks. They want to sell the papes. They want to sell papers, baby, even if the papers aren't made of paper anymore. The coverage absolutely can be unfair. There is a layer of opportunism in there where they're trying to write articles that people will read. But the press doesn't exist to be fair to you. The idea that there's like this institution over here that is being held to like extraordinarily high standards and like has to do all the press things to make sure that it's all correct and stuff, like that's true. But then also inside of that, it has to get views. It has to get clicks, just like you. And you can see this being taken like a step further, where there's all these like YouTube channels that are about taking popular creators down a peg. And they don't have all of those same constraints that the traditional press does. They don't have to care about whether stuff is true or not. They just can like tell a story about how whoever sucks and get a bunch of views because people want to see the drama. Like, that's the incentive. If you're wondering what's going on, always look for the incentives. And if you have status and you have power and you are the center of a lot of attention, even if you didn't intend for that to happen, though let's be honest, you did, you don't get to opt out of that part of it. And just because fame sucks more than you thought it would doesn't mean that this isn't just sort of a function of how it works. It's fine to talk about how it's unfair, but recognize that you are also the media. Like, if the media is coming at you and you're like, goddamn media, and then you're coming back to the media and you're like, haha, media, you suck. We're media-ing together. Everybody in this is the media. You're the media too. It's 2025. Mainstream media is podcasts. Mainstream media is YouTube. Mainstream media is not the papers. I mean, there's a different level of influence here and there, but like, you gotta understand that you can be mainstream media without having any idea that you did it. All you were was like a guy with a podcast. And ultimately, if you have a lot of power, people have a right to know what you're doing with that power. They have a right to judge whether they think you're doing good things with that power. Understanding that a guy is just a guy and he can make mistakes is not the job of the press. The job of the press is to, one, sell papers, and two, like, there is a part here which is like protect people from the excesses of influential individuals. That's why the press is a good check on power, because it has an incentive to write stories about people who are influential, which is why a lot of people who are very wealthy and influential hide. And I think ultimately, like, the trap that the successful, influential creator has entered into is wanting to have both the status, the money, the opportunities that come along with the success, but at the same time being very nostalgic for when it was all just fun and silly and did not come along with a bunch of responsibilities and obligations to do the right thing and to be being scrutinized all the time about whether or not you are doing the right thing. I see, like, billionaire tech founders bristling at criticism by saying, like, I'm just a guy trying to build something cool. And yeah, you are just a guy trying to build something cool, but you have a lot of power. So if you were once a guy who was trying to build something cool and like that was just you building it and nobody knew about it, then no one's paying attention. Once it's in the world and it's having large impacts on society, you could still be building something cool, but you are going to get increased scrutiny. You are going to get attention. You are going to get people writing stories about whether or not your cool thing is having a positive or negative impact on the world. It's such an unpleasant feeling to know that a bunch of people are forming opinions about you that you cannot control, that you do not feel reflect reality. Like, every person is normal person sized, right? What the fuck did I mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, every person is the size a person can be. This is important. So every person is the size a person can be. And so if you like have a bunch of people walking around, we're all sort of like within, 10 feet of each other. Let's just say that like at the max, like nothing more than 10 feet of each other. That's how big we are, even babies. But when it comes to influence on the world, that's not how we are. When it comes to our size in society, that's not how it is. Like, you can feel like you're a normal sized person. You're the size of a human. And of course you are. You have to be. But then when it comes to how you move in the world and how easy it is to accidentally knock somebody over, step on somebody, hurt somebody, crash into a building and knock the whole freaking thing down, that is real. And so it makes sense that people critique me. It makes sense that they look at me and say, okay, you made that video about, you're changing how you're investing money because of AI, but ultimately, aren't you just saying, isn't this like a different version of saying that you're trying to time the market? And that's a fair criticism. I was like, yeah, I should have said that part differently. I should have kept it simple and said, I invest in index funds because they are a tool for diversification. And right now, that diversification has kind of gone out the window. And I have found many suggestions that say, you shouldn't be in just one index fund anyway. You should spread that out. And so I spread it out. And all that stuff at the end of that video where I talked about like why I thought this was a good time to do it. I shouldn't have said that because you can't time the market. Everybody knows you can't time the market, or else everybody would have timed the market. So the choice that every influential person faces, though I don't know that they see it as a choice, but like we need to take this as a choice, is you can fight reality. You can insist that you're a normal sized person, that you don't have all the status and influence that you worked very hard to get, and you can stew about it when it feels unfair that people are coming for you and critiquing you more than they used to. Or you could accept the new reality and you could admit that you now live a different life and you are having a different experience, and you can use that power responsibly, and you can recognize that scrutiny is part of the deal and part of why you're going to end up using your power more responsibly. And if you didn't have that scrutiny, you probably wouldn't. And that's why the press is good. And that's why an audience that doesn't just see you as a god is good. Of course, an influential person is going to have nostalgia for when they did not have those responsibilities. But nostalgia is for feeling, not for expecting to be real. Feel the nostalgia, but don't feel like you're being treated poorly if you don't get to have it. You don't get to have nostalgia. That's why they call it nostalgia.